Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Inside Man United. My name is Rowan Brennan. I hope everyone had a fantastic weekend and welcome back to the channel. Of course, if this is your first time tuning in, thank you very much for checking us out. Today's episode, just going to do a little bit of a review of the Burnley game, a very important game. I think United's season can finally be considered to be kicking off, albeit 5 games into the season, with a very much needed win over Vincent Kompany's men away from home. We'll go into a few details from that match and also just a little bit of a look ahead to the Crystal Palace game and what we can expect from both teams. We're going to be playing them twice in a row, once in the Premiership, once in the Cup. And it's going to make for a very interesting kind of back-to-back clash. So let's get into it. So Manchester United's game against Burnley at Turf Moor was a big turning point, I think, for Erik ten Hag's men. This season, we were off the back of 3 defeats, as everybody well knows, and a victory was very, very important for a number of reasons to try and take some of the pressure off these players, certainly to take it off Ten Hag. There's already calls for Ten Hag to leave, which is frankly ridiculous. If you're one of those people, cop the fuck on. That's ridiculous. But a victory was needed and a strong result was needed as well. So there's a couple of takeaways that we can get from this game. First up is the adaptability of this team. There have been a huge amount of injuries to this United first team, which everybody has, been very well aware of, and we haven't coped that well. We adapted very well in this Burnley game. We had a completely makeshift backline with no one starting being a regular starter. We've Reguilon, who is slowly becoming a fan favourite due to his bombing runs down the left-hand side, and he is busting his ass and showing, I think, other members of that team what it takes and what it requires to be a Manchester United player. Jonny Evans and Lindelof deputising in the absence of Martinez and Varane. And Jonny Evans doing incredibly well, but we're gonna dedicate an entire section to Jonny Evans later on. And Dalot doing a reasonable job on the right-hand side. United kind of having a bit of a makeshift midfield as well, having to bring in new players. Scott McTominay coming in from the cold to take up some responsibility at midfield, not having played particularly well when he has been given his chances. I have wanted him to start ahead of Eriksen, and I think it's quite clear to see why Eriksen has not been favoured by many people to start games. He just hasn't been at the races really in the last few games, but Scott McTominay hasn't really shown much when he has come on, and in fact has looked quite unbothered by these opportunities and has pissed quite a few people off. But he got his start against Burnley and he did okay. But there was other members of this team that did quite well. I mean, I said a little while ago was United's or even the Premier League is seeing a resurgence in 4-4-2, and that's exactly what we saw against Burnley. We saw 4-4-2. With a kind of a diamond midfield again, in some ways, with Højlund and Rashford up front. We weren't playing with 2 kind of dynamic, fast-paced, inverted wingers, inverted or non-inverted. We didn't have those wingers. We didn't have the profile of player out there. We didn't have Garnacho, Pellistri. Obviously, Anthony and Sancho are missing. So we went with a kind of a narrow 4-4-2 or a 4-2-2-2, which we saw Ranić experiment with as well. But we showed great adaptability. So United being able to deal well with the absences all across the pitch, from in the middle, up front, and at the back. United adapted very, very well. And I think we put in the performance we wanted. The second key takeaway was just the level of professionalism that we showed during this game. So firstly, it was adaptability, being able to bring in the right personnel to do the job. But secondly, was the professionalism in which we played this game. This wasn't a 4-0 look their back. They absolutely tonked Burnley at their own ground. This was a dangerous game for United. Burnley, although they're at the bottom of the table, and Bruno Fernandez said this in his post-match interview, Burnley's position in the table is not a fair reflection of the quality of that team. In their opening 5 fixtures, they have played Aston Villa, Manchester United, Spurs, and City. Um, Pretty hard games. They are pretty tough games to be opening up with. And yes, they haven't got the results, but they've been playing some of the best informed teams in the league, apart from United, obviously. And, we got by with a professional 1-0 result. But Fernandez said, listen, this is not a team that should be at the bottom of the table. They are a very well-organized, well-drilled team. And they caused United problems. 3 inches to the left on that post, and it's 1-1, and all of a sudden it's a disaster. Still no win in our last four. The narrative completely changes. So what it proves is this is a game of fine margins. They had their chances, they didn't take them. But United, this is a professional display from United, which is what I wanted to see more than, just turning over a team that, might be a little bit scared or just doesn't have the quality. And what I saw from United was a level of professionalism and a level of calm. They let Burnley have possession. Okay, you break us down. You're at home. You like to play progressive, expansive football, which we saw Burnley do in the Championship. Okay, you also think we're here for the taking because we're in poor form. Come at us. And we allowed them to do that, and we took our chances. And it was a professional display. We didn't concede too many chances. We kept things tight. There was nothing I was ever worried about watching that game. I don't think anyone could say that they were kind of holding their breath and very nervous about what certain players were doing. It was professional. And I like to see that. It's something that we want to see. We saw it a lot last year with Ten Hag. Lots of 1-0s, dirty 1-0s. Keep it tight at the back, no mistakes, nothing too fancy. Wait for your opportunities. Be patient. When they come, take them. And that's exactly what we got. So really happy with the level of professionalism that United showed during that game. Thirdly, from this game, what we saw was a captain's performance from Bruno Fernandez and doing exactly what we expect from a captain in this game, which is running every inch of the pitch, being dynamic and strong in the middle, coming back and helping out in defense when it was required, helping set up the offense, getting forward when he needed to, and showing adaptability in our formations, being able to go from a 4-4-2 into a 4-3-3. And that's what we saw from Bruno. His goal, he came in off the right for that beautifully floated pass from Jonny Evans and took his goal incredibly well. Not quite as good as the Rooney Van Persie link up from 10 years ago or even longer, 11 years ago. But it was reminiscent of that. A nice, beautiful diagonal cross pitch floated ball over onto Bruno. And he takes it with a fine shot into the bottom corner. But he led well. This is a team that's in disarray. It needs leadership right now. It needs leadership from Ten Hag, and it needs leadership from Bruno Fernandez. And Bruno has shown himself to be a more than capable captain for this club. We heard disappointing news during the week that Solskjaer had offered the captaincy to Paul Pogba and Rashford. He didn't name those names, but it has since come out that those are the two names. I don't know whether that's been 100% confirmed, but it's very strongly believed. Now, I don't know why you'd have offered the captaincy to either of those players given their poor form and lack of discipline, certainly on the part of Pogba. And Rashford never really played that well during Solskjaer's tenure at all, really. None of the seasons during Solskjaer's time there was particularly good. He had flashes, he had good games here and there, but no sustained season-long charge from Rashford scoring lots of goals. And it was disappointing to hear that Rashford was one of the players that had turned it down. But we'll get onto that a little bit later on. United have been crying out for a strong captain for the last few years, and it's been kind of bounced around to Juan Mata and David De Gea, and then Fellaini had it during Mourinho's time. It's kind of been a bit of a hot potato issue for United. It's bounced around from player to player, and it's never really found a settled home with someone that's truly worthy of sitting in the pantheon of great United leaders. And it's good to see Bruno take on that responsibility and lead the team well. People mightn't like his attitude on the pitch. This guy runs his ass off. He's everywhere. He's all over the pitch. He covers every blade of grass. He's great in attack. He's great at setting the example of how a player is supposed to work when they're on the pitch. And it was great to see him get the winning goal, and to, even after the game, when both he and Jonny Evans were interviewed, when he got the man of the match performance, he gave it to Jonny Evans. He said, "You deserve this," and gave it to him on camera. That's captain behavior. That's what you want to see from the leader of your team. Because Jonny Evans, in my opinion, did deserve it. Which brings us on to Jonny Evans. What a performance. Great to see Jonny Evans turn back the clock on that performance against Burnley. He was fantastic, and fantastic against a team that had a lot of possession. It's not like we dominated possession and he was made look good because our team had the ball the whole time and he wasn't under pressure. They had the ball a lot. Let's look at some of the stats that we have here for Jonny Evans. Okay, 91% pass accuracy, so 60 out of 66 passes found their target. 81 touches, 8 clearances, 2 out of 2 ground duels won, 2 out of 2 aerial duels won, 1 key pass, 1 assist. It was a titanic fucking performance from Jonny Evans. Fantastic display. Loved to see it. This was the signing I was pleased about. Obviously, we're bringing in Jonny Evans because we couldn't get other reinforcements, but and Jonny Evans had some weak moments during preseason, but I understood why Jonny Evans was brought in. He's there as a break glass in case of emergency option. He knows the club. He's played at the highest level for United. He's won all the stuff that you can win at United, and he will provide leadership and experience for everyone in that team, not just in the defensive line. And he has those performances in him. Jonny Evans was a fantastic defender on his day. He just lacked a little bit of consistency sometimes. And, he was in there beside Chris Smalling, who also suffered from the same kind of thing. So the two of them together would, sometimes and often, have poor displays. And Jonny Evans was a good servant for the club. I was glad to see him go when he did. I thought that he could have had a probably better run of games in another club. I don't think he was good enough to be a starting centre-back for United, given where we were at the time, the troubles we were going through and the ground that we were having to make up on other teams that were starting to kind of show a lot more progression and started to overtake United. And I would have certainly been happy to see him on the bench, but he was too good to be on the bench at United. But it's great to see him back at the club. I'm so pleased for him that he turned in that kind of a performance. And long may it continue, because Martinez is still a bit niggly. Varane can't be relied upon. And it's great to see him come into this kind of form just when we need it. And I hope that he can continue it against Crystal Palace. And he most definitely deserves to get a start if Martinez is still a little bit niggly and not feeling 100%. And there's even shouts for, if Martinez is fit, to pair Jonny Evans with Martinez and get Lindelof on the bench. I would not be averse to seeing that at all. So big congrats to Jonny Evans. Delighted for him. Finally, one of the big takeaways from this game was Hannibal Mejbri. This kid has absolutely lit it up every time he's come on. And this isn't just typical United fans getting overly excited about a youth team prospect that we have been chomping at the bit for about 4 years to see. We know that he has been developed with the sole idea of him getting into the first team. Everyone knew this guy had it in him to get into the first team. He hasn't been a late bloomer. He wasn't just making up the numbers at youth level. This is a guy that was bought with the sole purpose of training him and conditioning him to come into the first team. And boy, has he answered the call. Yes, he has benefited from injuries, but lots of youth players have benefited from injuries and made their careers at United. Marcus Rashford came in and did it when there was key injuries to players up front. He came in, took his chance, and he's been in the first team since as a 17-year-old. That was in his maiden season. Rashford's in his 9th season now, can you believe? And in his first season, he got 11 games and scored 5 goals. It's his best goals to games ratio of any season he's ever had, and it just happened to be in his first season. Okay, it was 11 games, 5 goals. Maybe he would have slowed down had he had the entire season, but he lit it up, and he's never left. Raphael, when Gary Neville started to get injuries, he came in and he made that right spot back his own. Fabio Silva was the one that was the more talented out of the twins, and he had Patrice Evra to contend with, who wasn't going anywhere. So, Raphael got his chance on the right-hand side, and he became a mainstay in that United side and has gone down as a bit of a club legend. Now we see Hannibal Mejbri taking advantage of the opportunities being afforded to him with injuries to Mount, with Casemiro's form. Obviously, he's doing well now, or starting to come back into a bit of form, but he is not convinced yet that he is back to his best. Mount is out. Amrabat's still a little bit injured. There's key injuries elsewhere in that midfield. and Kobe Mainu, of course, is who's everyone excited to see come back. But Hannibal Mejbri has been given his chance, and he's done really well. He came into a Bayern game, into a cauldron of a game, a huge amount of pressure, and he did very, very well and showed exactly, again, what Reguilon is showing. Højlund, Mejbri, and Reguilon, three guys in their maiden season at United, all actually showing other more established, longer serving servants of this club what it takes to stick in this team, and showing what the work rate is that's required to wear that badge with any sort of pride and to put performances on the pitch that result in the results that this club should expect. Hannibal Mejbri has been outstanding, and I hope to see him continue. It'll not be nice to see him maybe rotate with Amrabat. Eriksen and McTominay, I think, will be on the bench. I think Amrabat, now that he's got a little bit of a run out, might get a start ahead of McTominay. And it'll be great to see Hannibal Mejbri just go from strength to strength and see him develop into the player we all know he can. He's traditionally a 10. He is an attacking midfielder. There's no reason why this kid can't be a number 8 to play in beside Casemiro when he's playing, or to play in beside Amrabat. If he's going to be a little bit more defensive, Amrabat's going to take up that number 8 role if he's playing in beside Casemiro. But the options and flexibility United are going to have in midfield over the coming weeks it should be the envy of many teams in that league. We've suffered a lot, but I think once we get all our players back fit, there's going to be an incredible amount of sorry, my mic is falling here. There's going to be an incredible amount of options and different ways that we can play tactical flexibility, and Hannibal Mejbri is a very, very welcome addition to that. So very, very excited to see what he's going to be doing over the rest of the season. Looking slightly ahead to the Palace game, I want to see more of the same, except I would be replacing McTominay with Amrabat. I'm hoping that I would like to see Marcus played into form as well. I don't think dropping him at the moment is going to do anything for squad harmony. I don't think it's going to help develop the relationship between Højlund and Rashford in the early stages of them playing with one another. So while I can understand people clamoring for, maybe Rashford to get a bit of a boot up his arse and to maybe be dropped, give Garnacho a chance, etc., I see merit in that, but I don't think that it's going to yield the best results. I think we need to play Rashford into form. Of course, if he continues in this vein, we drop him, but we've got a really nice run of fixtures coming up. A lot of the hard games that we were expecting at the start of the season are now over. We've got Palace and Sheffield United and some games, a lot of games against lower end teams, which are exactly the type of fixtures that you want for players that you're trying to get back into form. You want to get them those games against that slightly easier opposition. There's no easy games in the Premiership, of course, but if you're going to be up against people that are in the lower half of the table, they're the games that you want to get your players back into form, give them a little bit of confidence, play their way back into where they can get to, and to also help develop the relationship between players who've just arrived. Reguilon and Rashford need to learn how to play with one another. Rashford and Højlund need to learn how to play with one another. It looks like Amrabat is going to be back as well. So with so many new boys coming into the team, it's good to have some of the old guard there just to kind of help guide them into that into that process. So it looks like the back line, I wouldn't be against seeing Martinez and Jonny Evans, but Jesus, Jonny Evans needs to start after that last game. The guy should have had a goal and an assist. He was very unlucky to have that goal ruled off. But I think if that's not a good enough performance for Jonny Evans to start, I don't know what is. So I think it should send out a message to the rest of the squad that even when you're a 35-year-old veteran who's been brought in just to kind of be as a break glass in case of an emergency option, when you come in and play that well, it doesn't care who you are and under what circumstances you come into this team. If you play like that and you show that kind of a performance, you start. And I think it sends a great message to the other players that those kind of performances are rewarded. So I really do hope to see Jonny Evans start. Who thought we'd been saying that at the beginning of the season? Anyway, that's just a small look ahead to the Palace game. I'm actually going to do a separate video on Palace, how I think the team should line up, what I think we can expect from that game, and how I think tactically we should be setting up and looking to approach that game. Thank you very, very much for joining me. Thank you for tuning in. Of course, smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button as well. But at the very least, throw us a like if you can. And thank you very, very much for tuning in. And I'll see you in the next one.